So we're pleased to have a great topic to talk about with you all today. Um, if you aren't familiar with the EV Council, we meet quarterly. We convene to share best practices, new information, trends in the EV space among all the different EV stakeholders, from industry to nonprofits to agencies and, of course, local jurisdictions. So we're here today in our fall quarterly meeting to talk about the topic of community engagement to improve planning and projects. So we're really excited to talk about this topic today with our wonderful panelist, Joy Massey. More about her later. And then we'll wrap up the meeting with roundtable announcements from all of you members. Next slide, please. And as a reminder, these meetings are hosted by the Bay Area Air District and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and Acterra and Cool to Earth are both facilitators. So if this is your first EV Council meeting, also please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Today's panel on community engagement will explore many different facets of this topic. We will be looking at the topic of community needs assessments and why it's important. And we will also be looking at recommendations and pitfalls to avoid based on real experience. We're also very welcoming of your feedback and your experiences. So when we get to the discussion after the presentation, we'd love to hear from all of you about your experiences with community engagement and what your learnings have been. You can put your questions in the chat. You can hold on to your questions and raise your hand when we get to the Q&A, and I'll be sure to call on you if I see your hand raised. Next slide. So our first panelist today is Joy Massey from MCE, and we were planning to have Nicole Appenzeller from SF Environment speak as our second panelist. Unfortunately, she has come down with a terrible illness of some sort, which has deprived her of her voice. So she's unable to speak today and very disappointed not to be able to join us. But we will reach out to her and we'll be sure to pass along her slide deck to share with all of you. But we are very fortunate to have Joy with us today from MCE. Next slide, please. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Joy. She is the manager of transportation electrification at MCE. She guides the development and implementation of equitable, customer-focused, clean transportation solutions across MCE's service area. With over a decade of experience in clean mobility, she has spearheaded projects such as the deployment of mobility hubs at affordable housing communities, integrating EV car sharing and other shared mobility options throughout the Bay Area. Joy is a champion of innovative, community-driven partnerships and brings deep expertise in collaborating with diverse stakeholders to advance strategic, equity-centered decision-making. She holds a BA from the University of California, Berkeley, and a Master of Public Health from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And Joy, if you could turn on your video, we will make sure that you are spotlighted.
Hi, and I might go off camera for a bit as I am having some computer issues, and so I just want to make sure that I have the bandwidth, but I will try to stay on as long as possible. And I'm happy to get started if that's okay with everyone. Is it okay to get started?
Yeah, next slide, please. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Get started. It's all yours.
Great. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Let me go off camera for just a little bit because there is things in the universe that it's like from people being sick to my computer now acting up a little bit. But hello everyone. Wendy, thank you for the introduction, detailed introduction. Joy Massey, I am MCE's Manager of Transportation Electrification. And so hopefully folks are familiar with MCE and CCAs, but what we do on the TE side or the transportation electrification side is design and administer and implement programs that benefit our customers in supporting their transition as it relates to transportation and electrifying how they get around. So we have multiple customer programs, some that are included, or some that include uh, providing electric vehicle rebates. So for the purchase of new or use to own or lease vehicles, right? And that rebate is stackable with the current rebate that we have right now on the federal level. We also have a managed charging program for our residential customers, and that's really helping our customers charge when it makes the most sense for the grid and also when it is the most affordable for them, and also our electric vehicle charging program, which provides rebates to support the installation of L level one and L level two chargers from multifamily settings, businesses, workplaces, and really kind of being expansive, right, of kind of where chargers are put into place. And so with that programs, we provide electric vehicle rebates, or excuse me, charging rebates, and also technical assistance to really support the process to get our customers started. What I am most excited about in talking to you all today is a program that we launched in 2023. I joined MCE in 2023. And 2 seconds, you all, I'm going to go off camera because my laptop is not charging. Don't want to go dead. Yeah, so I joined MCE and just a little bit more about my background and why I think presenting on this topic. For those who are familiar with me, you probably have heard me talk about community engagement and the importance of doing this work as it relates to transportation planning, because that is actually my background and how I was trained. I'm a public health practitioner, transportation planner, if you will, right? But really rooted in community needs and community assessments. And so before joining MCE, I was at Transform, which is a Oakland-based nonprofit really focused on the nexus of um, kind of transportation, if you will, and environmental justice and so much more. And in that time, I was able to lead one of the first California funded by the California Air Resources Board, their first kind of CMO, Clean Mobility Options Program. This was before CMO actually was formalized and before CARB really actually had the process to, yeah, deliver funding, the infrastructure on what it takes to get this funding to communities. And there wasn't a blueprint, right? Like we received funding in partnership with MTC, and it was like, okay, great, go design a community engagement process and also ensure that these dollars reach communities. And in the case, the communities were affordable housing developments. And so, doing this work, I learned the importance of what it means to really engage communities, to design community needs assessments, to really understand communities' transportation needs, right? Really starting from a place of what's working, right? Often as planners and practitioners, we go in with the problem of what's not working. And so how do we really like start with assets, right? Like what is working in communities? And then how do we design mobility hubs, right? Back in 2017 and 18, when I started in this space, putting chargers and designing mobility hubs and affordable housing developments in the Bay Area was fairly new. A lot of cities didn't even have permitting processes for putting chargers within the public right of way. And so I spent a lot of my time really thinking through what is the best community engagement process to really then right size how the state spends dollars, right, to help this transition, to help communities be at the forefront of this clean energy, clean transportation transition, however we want to frame it. And so I bring this to the conversation because that is a part of my background, and also wanting to call out, I know that there was some pre-reading, but The Air Resources Board started to distribute funding. They started to require needs assessment, really based under the Clean Energy and Pollution Reduction Act of 2015, which was a study to really a call to really to understand the barriers of low income residents and the barriers that they have in accessing zero emission kind of mobility options, right? Like, what are their barriers? What are their needs? And from that study, one thing that was called out was this idea of awareness and information and understanding their needs. And this is where the concept of needs assessments came about, right? Some people call them transportation needs assessments or transportation surveys, but really this idea of starting again from a place of need. So that is a mini history lesson rooted in like how I come to this space. And now at MCE, I'm doing this more at a larger level to really understand our community needs. And that is really what Charged by Public Power is. We receive funding from the Department of Energy to work with about 9 priority communities. We can move to the next slide. In the to work with about 9 priority communities to one, understand their needs, and to also work with a group of community stakeholders, which is our advisory council, to really plan, install, and then support the future deployment of electric vehicle charging station as well as other clean mobility solutions. So very similar framework that I think people in the field are already doing or should be doing, which is before you go in and for us, before we went in and was like, hey, we want to put chargers here, 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 let us actually understand what the community needs. Let us work with the stakeholders who can, who are decision makers, who are doing this work already. Let's combine this effort, right? And then from there, let's develop a plan to deploy chargers as well as support other clean mobility solutions that aren't necessarily car centric, if you will. And so that is kind of the root of Charged by Public Power. If you're following the federal administration, if I was delivering this presentation to the DOE, I probably would remove things like disadvantage, right, priority communities, and that is how we've actually we've received some direction, if you will, from the DOE to shift our work. But I will say that MC is really committed to still doing what we plan to do, which is to really identify those communities that really need to receive this support first, right, or as a part of this process, and to prioritize them. And so that is a long way of saying what's here on in terms of our project objective on this slide. Next slide. So, in terms of our priority communities, MCE works across multiple counties. Within those counties, we've identified 9 cities, or 8 with the inclusion of incorporated Contra Costa County, to really work with, right? To work with community partners, to work with CBOs, to actually reach residents, to work with transportation authorities, and so much more to understand what's happening already in terms of charging, EV charging, what's working, what's not working, and most importantly, where does the community want to see chargers in a way that makes the most sense for them? And so how I think a question that'll probably come up is how did MCE essentially select these communities? We went through a very rigorous process of looking at multiple data sets. Some of those included the Justice 40 data set, Cal and Viro screen. There's 2 other that I can't remember, right? And so we essentially took all of our cities, we assigned weighted scores, and those with the most need came to the top of the list, and that's what we have here. Next slide, please. This is our approach to the work of Charged by Public Power, and I'll go a bit more into the weeds. And so phase 1, which we just completed, I would say early this year, was our planning and community engagement phase. We spent a good first half of the year to launch our Community Electric Transportation Council, our CETC, which is an advisory group that I'll discuss more in just a second, that are really kind of helping us ground truth the work that we are doing. And so this group will continue to advise the program as we continue on, as long as we have the grant. And so that was really the first step. Let's develop the CTC. Let's work with them to then do what we need to do, which was to do community engagement first. With the CTC and with our facilitators for this program, we have designed and administered community surveys, community transportation surveys, a needs assessment, if you will, and we've also hosted focus groups. And so we worked with this group to really ground truth the survey, to host focus groups, to identify best locations for the focus groups, and that was much of the work in year one and moving into this year, and also analyzing those results. Year two or phase two is really focused now on how do we do this. I think what's listed here obviously is not inclusive of what it takes to install chargers, as some of us might know, right? But we are now taking that feedback, some of which I'll share in this presentation, to actually identify and prioritize charging sites that will be yeah, will kind of fit the criteria for what we're trying to do, and then understand what level of funding can MCE from this DOE grant that we have coupled with MCE's funding, right? Like how much funding can we put towards a site and really try to deliver fully funded electric vehicle charging sites as selected by or as kind of, yeah, selected by community input, both from our residents and also our advisory council. And, you know, the year is almost over with. We are not at the point of installing EV chargers. We are just now about to work with the CETC to come to a consensus of the types of locations that we actually want to prioritize based on community feedback. And we'll start to, the goal is to end this year with identifying potential site host to do this work. So that's phase two, and phase three is the continued deployment of the chargers to really think about ways in which MCE can collaborate and support other clean mobility options that exist and that might have been identified through our needs assessment process. And then to just do the final data collection. I do see this work continuing on past 2026 as you know, phase two is taking just a bit more time. Phase one and phase two has taken a bit more time to do the work. And one thing that I'll say, since I have a bit more time, I'm kind of expanding on my talking points here, but when we think about community engagement and in this work that I've done over the past 10 plus years is as practitioners, we are often moving at our own pace, right? Which is often guided by a grant timeline or, you know, a fiscal year timeline, and we aren't moving at the pace of communities. And I think that it is really important to really thoroughly think through the amount of time that you are spending to do community engagement to inform a transportation planning process of any kind. It is not, you know, you hear people say it's not a check mark thing. It really does take time. And so in this process, and what I'll explain, we did a lot of iterations. It wasn't just about like developing a survey and delivering the survey. It was like we developed a survey, the survey was the survey, and we realized we needed a little bit more richer results. We paused, we came up with a whole new outreach strategy, right? And we really wanted to ensure that we were moving at the speed in which the community could engage with us. We were moving at the speed in which our CBOs could participate in focus groups, right? And that takes time. And so community engagement should not be a rush process at any in any form, right? At any time. And it is very intentional. It should be a very intentional process. And so I think if that is the takeaway that you get from this conversation, it really is to move with intentionality and really think about the speed in which you're moving and is that matching the needs of the communities, right? Oftentimes, we don't. I'll talk about this in a second, but communities the priority communities in which we're working with, purchasing an EV is not their priority. Putting a charger in the ground is not their priority. Paying rent, making their basic needs are their priorities. Safety in their neighborhood are their priorities. And so, with that context, right? Um, yeah, just understanding that context, then how are you moving your community engagement forward? Next slide, please. These are project partners that comprise our CETC, our advisory council. You can see kind of the depth of the types of people who are involved, from transportation authorities to CBOs, and we are actually looking to expand this list to ensure that we have the right agencies representing the communities that we are serving, and to ensure that we have decision makers on our advisory council. So this is what the list is currently, and this list might also be changing. Next slide. So planning for community engagement, as I mentioned, this process took MCE probably about a year and a half. And in order to do this work, what we started with was first taking a step back and designing a web page that informed our customers of exactly what is charged by public power. We also developed a toolkit that was then administered to our CETC members and to other kind of community organizations, people who work directly with communities. And in that toolkit, we provided talking points, we provided sample social media posts, we provided listserv, email templates, any of the communication channels that existed, that we received feedback from our advisory council on how to do this, on how to put the word out. We took time to really design text and materials for our partners to easily distribute and support the community engagement phase. So took time to develop a toolkit to do this work. I've mentioned the CETC a lot, but really, again, we worked with the CETC to do a lot of this work. We developed a pretty robust community outreach plan for both the surveys and the focus groups. I will just give a major shout out to MCE's Public Affairs and our engagement team, who already works very closely with our member communities, and they really did inform this work. And so we brought on Kimberly Horn as our facilitator of the focus groups and helped design the surveys, but we also brought on an equity advisor, Emergent Labs, which I can also drop their information in the chat as well. And they really did bring on the, like, again, and I keep saying the word ground truthing, but they really did ensure that we were meeting the original goals of our program and doing this from a place that was understood and could be received by our communities. And so working together from MCE to Kimberly Horn and Emergent Labs, I think we did have a really good foolproof strategy to design things that actually worked for the community and not just the goals of the grant, if that makes sense. We created an online survey. There were paper options available in multiple languages to ensure accessibility. Again, things that people should be doing already, but just naming that. And then developed for our focus groups, we developed a lot of materials, facilitator guides. We had several in-person activities that we took time to design as well. So these are accomplishments, but also how we planned for community engagement. That next slide, we'll talk about the work that we have. So this effort, this almost like year of planning, yielded 600 surveys that we were actually able to use, because these were surveys that we received from our priority communities. I will say that we received probably over 1,200 survey responses. And again, that is just really due to the way in which we did our outreach, the outreach plan, the toolkit, right? We were able to reach a lot of people. Some of those were bots, but I can definitely say that roughly 600 were actual, we hope that were actual participants. Our target was 125, so we excelled in that. And again, I think that's really due to our outreach strategy and the work that we did. We also completed community-led focus groups across 8 different communities. We did 9 in person, 2 virtual. We did focus groups where they were specifically Spanish only, and those who were English speaking had to actually use interpretation equipment, which I think is a um, uh, excellent strategy that I've used practice before to really ensure accessibility and comfortability. We provided childcare, food. We provided participants $100 an hour for their time and participation. And we engaged over 130 community members where our target was 130. And so I would say the focus groups happened in about a month and a half, and we were able to reach that. So that was great. And yeah, to do the focus groups, we work with about 8 CBOs. And again, that took time. It takes time to build relationships with CBOs. It takes time to introduce new work. It takes time to yeah, to just do this work. So I'm just really reiterating time and timing of community engagement. Next slide. I wasn't sure exactly on if it's of interest to this group on some of the information that we received. All of this, we have detailed reports. I will say that the information that is here hopefully is not new to folks, but some of the themes that we received in doing focus groups was that there really is an inequity in charging infrastructure. I think that is a part of why we are doing the work that we are right now. And participants really did emphasize charging deserts in their neighborhood and really highlighting barriers to public charging, right? As well as at-home charging. And so, again, themes with renters were very apparent. People discussed a lot about just the uptime and downtime rather of chargers and just mistrust in infrastructure, mistrust in what it means to own and operate an electric vehicle, mistrust in an electric vehicle charging not working or working. I will say that yeah, so I'll pause there. I also see a lot of things happening in the chat, so I would also just open if there are questions. While I also take a moment to gather my thoughts and get water, but yeah, if there's questions, feel free to ask them directly. I will say, Kim, to your point, the focus groups were the best approach. I think if we were to do this again, which we might have to, I would strictly just do focus groups. I would really put time and effort into the focus groups. I think the survey is great. I think there are ways that you can get quantitative data in focus groups, but the focus groups is where, yeah, we were able to deeply explore the needs and the themes that existed for our community members. Any other questions?
No, I think we covered some of them already, so feel free to continue.
Okay, great. I see another question around what channels did you find worked best to draw people to the focus groups and online surveys? We had paid digital ads. We ran things on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and things of that nature. We also had like CBOs have our information. And so if you take yeah, kind of just like any CBO, as they're doing outreach, they are also talking about the work that MCE is doing as well. And so I think those just like direct partnerships, the in-person information about the work is really helpful. And so I'm a strong believer in cross collaborating. So as you're talking about, I don't know, an after school program with parents, if you can also talk about this opportunity, is another way to think about it, or is another way to kind of to get the information out to people. I will keep going as I'm also pulling up our key takeaways as well. I will say just reading directly so that we could yeah, just get a little bit more into the weeds of what we heard. I would say Renters, specifically within the cities of Richmond, Vallejo, and San Rafael, reported little to no access to home charging. There was, again, really a widespread mistrust of charging systems, as I mentioned earlier, around just like specifically unclear signage, pricing, and functionality. So people not knowing how, things work. And then people also really questioned if this infrastructure, if this new technology is really for them, or is this a sign of gentrification, or is the infrastructure for commuters, tourists, and such. And I think that really does speak to the need of outreach and education needing to be coupled with this work as well. Next slide. The emotional load behind EVs, what we found in the focus groups is that for many, switching to an electric vehicle felt overwhelming, and it was less about the environmental values and the environmental benefits and more about survival. People ask questions like, what happens if I move? What if my landlord wants to install a charging? Is it safe to charge my vehicle where I live? And questions around like, will my PG&E bill go up and so much more. And really what we gleaned from this is as we're doing this work again as practitioners, that we continue to talk about the total cost of ownership, excuse me, as it relates to EV, car insurance, charging, maintenance, all of those things really being a major concern. That a lot of people think that public charging cost a lot of money, and they were surprised around like the actual cost of charging. Social pressures was to answer, I think, Kim's question in the chat around kind of what was most surprising. I think stigma related to not owning an EV was something that came up, is that folks were really worried about like, well, what's going to happen in a couple years from now when I don't own an electric vehicle? Am I going to be judged for that? And so stigma was something that came up. And then people brought up our aging electrical systems, right? And what that means for them and how chargers can get installed. So there was a spectrum of not knowing to also, I actually know, but I really have these like deep questions of what it is. And so I will end this slide in saying that our focus groups participants really did emphasize that they did not need to be sold a product, right? Coming to them and saying, this is an electric vehicle, these are the benefits, this is why you should do X, Y, and Z, right? They wanted to more so be included in the transition and to really feel like this transition is something that is accessible for them. And so really framing how we talk about this work in a way of this is how this fits into your life, right? This is why this is a benefit to you and not just like we're doing it for the sake because we have to give a presentation. And so they really emphasize like we don't want to be sold anything. We really just want to understand um yeah, what is the kind of the best need case for us. Next slide. So I'm coming towards the end of my presentation. I wanted to highlight a few of the types of locations that were identified by the community. And I will just say that in our survey and in the focus group, the way that we framed this question was that we asked our participants to dream, right? We knew that a lot of our um, community members did not own or have access to an electric vehicle and other clean mobility solutions. So we said, hey, in the future, if and when you have access to these things, where would you like to see them? And this was a part of the what you see here is the types of locations in which community members identified. I will say that across the board, parks, public parks, were really something that came through and something that we might be focusing on for this work. BART came across multiple times. I know that BART is currently on.
Yeah.
There.
Right.
Right.
Good luck.
Someone is not on mute. EV charging as well. So these are the types of locations that we then will start to focus on for where we want to plan the EV charging. And next slide, I will just go over a couple of these slides. It's a little small here, but if you zoom in, or if we can zoom in on a couple of these, what this is are maps of the particular priority communities. So in the focus groups, participants were given a map of their area. The Cal and Viral screen, which is what's mapped over, um, we did not show what was a disadvantaged community or not. And something that came out of this process is like where community members actually want to see chargers are actually in um, disadvantaged communities as described or as identified through the Cal and Viral screen. And so we were able to overlay the Cal and Viral screen map onto this map. And so these are some of the locations, specific locations in which community members want to see chargers, and the bigger circles indicate that more people actually were express interest in this. I will say disclaimer that some of these locations might actually have EV charging or EV charging next to them or within a third of a mile. That is the work that we'll be working with our CETC to understand. But some of this, a lot of this actually matches or mirrors onto the previous slide where people are identifying parks or grocery stores or faith-based organizations, right? And so as we think about the implementation of this work, we will be using these types of locations. And if we can actually install chargers in a couple of these very specific locations. I will say that we do have funding to do anywhere from L1 to DC fast charging, especially within the public right of way, really being mindful of the types of chargers that we'll be supporting through this work. And we won't be able to fund everything. We won't be able to even fund every city having a charger. That is a part of the work that I will be building on and making the case for MCE to continue. But we will be putting some funding behind a couple of these to really continue to do this work. So you can continue on to the next slides, but these slides show, and you can see like, right, the yellow for some areas where there are DACs in these communities as by the Cal and Virus screen are actually where our community members said that they wanted chargers in the focus groups. Next slide. And the rest of the slides just go through the other priority communities. And I will mention, like, oh, sorry, if we go back to one slide and then I'm done. If we take Richmond, and I think there was like Vallejo, I went through MCE's current pipeline and where we funded chargers. Some of the chargers are actually, again, like I said earlier, they've already been installed. But we also have reports that the chargers are inoperable for multiple reasons, vandalism, theft. And so really thinking through where is funding best used? Is it used to replace those chargers or to add chargers in new locations? And so we'll be learning from that. And as we built into the requirements to do this work, to install the chargers, we also will be incorporating other community features that we heard that folks would like to see with chargers, right? So ensuring the chargers are in well-lit places, ensuring that if we can co-locate with other mobility options, right? There's so much more safety, there's signage, there's a lot. I supported Lyft before I think they were Lyft in doing e-bikes in the city of Oakland and what that meant to really work with communities to support that work. And what that looked like is actually having community organizations sponsor murals and the types of ads that go on to the bike share stations. Really reflected the community. And I think this is as we think about doing this work in communities where new technology is seen as a marker of so many things. We really have to be intentional about the types of technology that we're putting in and what that technology looks like, and making sure that that technology is also coupled with, again, this really community-centered outreach and education. So that is the end of my presentation. I welcome any questions, thoughts, and happy to answer questions post-meeting as well.
Thank you so much, Joy. First off, if you're comfortable, would you mind sharing your contact info in the chat? Because we had some requests for that. And yeah, thank you so much for this informative presentation. The visuals were really attention grabbing and the data was really rich at the end. So thank you for sharing both the sort of high level concepts as well as your data. I had one question to start us off on the Q&A, which I saw uh, coming up since you were talking about the range of charging options that you were intending to provide. Have you considered or given some thought to whether you would preferentially do something like a lower cost L1 because you could get more ports or more number of chargers out of it versus a higher, faster charging type setup? Have you thought about the sort of trade-off there with quantity versus speed?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all going to be site dependent, and that is what's going to come with the feasibility studies that will have to happen. And so I can't, I mean, yes and no, right? I think yes, there's definitely benefits and scenarios where L1 works and where you might um, actually need to install DC fast charging for one of the reasons that someone said in, in the chat, right? Around like how fast someone is or how long someone will be at a location. So that depends on the where the chargers are located. And so we have funding to deploy types of chargers. We want to make sure that we are also, yeah, putting in chargers that will meet the need as it exists right now, but also the growing need and the demand that we are expecting, right, by doing the work that we all are doing on this council, right? And so really making sure we can support that as well.
Right. And yeah, a sort of a related question. Someone was asking whether you are targeting multifamily, curbside, all of those options. Are you sort of focusing on any type, depending on the community?
So I will say that based off, I can't remember what slide, where we're gonna go where we have the most agreement. The most agreement from our focus group process as well as from our CTC council. And so multifamily is great if that has been an identified need by the community, then we will explore that. But if our communities are saying, actually, we want to see chargers in X, Y, and Z, and our advisory council, like, I don't know, I think if we take a school, right, and if people are, and if we have agreement where people want to see chargers at schools, that's where we're going to try to focus our intention. So this is really we are really leading with community identified locations first. And so we did a really robust community engagement process. And so whatever that data is telling us, we then will come to agreement with our advisory council and go that way. And so publicly available versus not, like again, I think this is going to depend on the site assessments and the feasibility studies that we conduct, but this is, yeah, it's traditionally different than how we run our larger EV charging program, how most of us run, you know, who manage EV charging programs, where, yeah, we're trying to find consensus on with community needs.
Great, thank you. So a couple questions about the funding. Marina was asking what is the grant that you got? And I'm wondering also if you can speak a little bit to approaches that jurisdictions or other agencies might take in terms of seeking funding to support community engagement, informed planning.
Yeah, well, we received specifically a DOE grant from their vehicle technology office. I don't think that opportunity will come again just with the federal administration. But I can share more information. There are multiple cohorts. We are one of currently the last cohort until that funding might be released again. And so people are doing this all over the US in terms of leading with community engagement first and then receiving funding to do the installs. And so that's the grant that we received from the Department of Energy in terms of, I think your second part, Wendy, was around like grants for community engagement and to do kind of the needs assessment planning. I know that the Air Resources Board has their STEP grant, and they have grants to specifically do just needs assessments, right? Like if you really just want to like understand and know that the city of Napa just received, I'm just naming some people in our jurisdiction, that they just received a grant just to develop a needs assessment and to do community outreach, right? To then inform, okay, hey, we have these dollars. This is how we're going to best distribute the dollars based off community needs.
Great, thank you. And then I see a question from Kathy in the chat about maintenance. That's something that is a
Yeah.
perennial question about, the quality of the chargers. What happens after they're installed? Is there a maintenance plan? So could you speak a little bit about how that works into your project?
That's the goal, is that we would not only provide funding for the purchase and the install of equipment, but for any ongoing maintenance and operations, perhaps extended warranty. Again, we want to ensure that these chargers are put into the ground and not just left alone, that we're actually investing beyond just the install part. And so, yes, that is the goal, is to have those, to have in maintenance and operations plan coupled with this funding.
Thank you. Another question I had was, in the process of building these relationships, when you're building the focus groups and working with community members, are there some kind of indirect benefits or pleasant surprises that you've found in terms of building out the sort of network that you have and increasing the education in communities? What kinds of other follow-on benefits are you seeing, if that makes sense?
Can you repeat the last? Like, I don't think that there was anything surprising, with the exception of it takes time. It takes time to get CBOs to sign agreements, to find timing that aligns with their current programming and planning. I think that one thing that we were really mindful of, and what actually probably prolonged our focus groups, is that we were mindful of immigration issues that were happening and the fear that was happening in our priority communities. And so making sure that we had virtual or moving focus groups to virtual only was something that was not necessarily a surprise, but something that we did adjust to. Safety is always a thing when you're doing community engagement. That is physical safety, that's emotional safety, that's like safety around immigration status as well. So we were very mindful of that and adapted our plan, um, I would say in like December, January.
Fantastic. Yeah, and thank you so much for going into detail about the sort of pace and how that process can't be rushed. I think that's a really great point, and thank you for mentioning that. I'd like to call on one of the audience with their hand up, EV Plug Box.
Um, Hello, this is Bryce with EV Plug Box. And every renter in California has a right to charge. It's Civil Code 1947.6. And when I've spoken to residents who even have an EV and live in an apartment and would like to charge, I found a great reluctance for them to assert that right and seek EV charging. Have you had experience with that? Do you have people who have an EV and would like to charge and would be bold enough to assert their right under California law?
I've had people come directly to me via phone or email asserting that. Yeah, very aware of that. I think it is getting more knowledge to renters out, right, about that this civil code does exist. And so when that does happen, we are often directed to the property manager or the owner of the property. So um, I think people who know, but I also think that, like, quite frankly, there's a great deal of people, and we're talking about low income communities who, again, don't even have access to an EV. They don't know the civil code, right? Like, they don't understand that. And so I do think that it is our work as practitioners to spread that knowledge and to also work with property owners to ensure that charging. So yes, it happens, but I think for the community members that we're referring to here, um, I could bet on my career experience that a lot of them don't know that, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks for the question. Question from Molly about sort of how you are interfacing with other companies. So are these chargers that you are going to manage and own, or are you working with
That's a good
third
question.
parties?
Yeah, so this, I mean, it says recording. This is that's the part. MCE will not own or operate these chargers. We more than likely will develop some type of process, RFP, RFI, some type of process where we are going to be looking for a site host to do this work. And so to the site host. So we will provide the funding to install and to hire folks to put the chargers in the ground and maintain and operate them, but MCE will not be owning it. We will put all of our resources into prepping site hosts, the criteria, but we will not be owning or operating the chargers. And so this is where we're kind of entering into that phase of identifying what is the criteria, who makes the what is the best criteria. I will also say for some of the locations that were identified, like if you take a faith-based organization or CBO, they don't necessarily have the infrastructure or the staff capacity to own and operate chargers or even just like the knowledge to do so. And so wanting to make sure we find ways in which they have access to charging infrastructure if that's something that they are interested in, right? And so there are things that we have to do just based off this being a federal grant, right? Like in terms of like running a solicitation, if we're giving X amount of funding, um, but again, I like really want to bring in equity to this conversation where churches were identified multiple times in the presentation. And in my work and working with faith-based organizations, they don't necessarily have, the capacity to do this. And so the community wants it. A site host might want it, but they don't know how. And I think that's the work that we also are going to have to do. I think when we talk about equitable distribution of EV charging, multifamily and putting it where people live is great, but we also need to be a bit more expansive on what that looks like, right? Where else are people traveling to? And so that's why for me, seeing locations like schools and parks and grocery stores and laundromats and where people are traveling, where our community centers exist, like where is community going and thriving right now, and how do we also expand our work beyond that? And so that's also something that I push. It's great to do it in multifamily. I think that is yes, but in order to really support this transition, we're going to have to be expansive for people who are honestly just going to be last in this transition. And so it's our work to think about it.
Thank you, Joy. I wanted to ask one final two-part question, if I may. The first is, can you very quickly summarize a key lesson that you learned in terms of some successful element of this study that you're proud of? And on the flip side, something that you've now learned in retrospect, oh, I would recommend everybody avoid doing it this way, something of that sort.
It's a hard question. Um, I I think I learn something new every time I work with the communities and understanding their barriers. I think in this process, we learned a lot from seniors and their needs in this process as it relates to the transition. I think um, I will also name that like we are assuming, right, in this conversation that people will have access to drive a car for multiple reasons, right? And how we really need to expand the conversation, how we really should be building charging infrastructure that doesn't just charge vehicles. They should be charging mobility devices, they should be charging e-bikes, they should be charging e-scooters, right? And so for me, if we really want to build resilient technology that meets the needs of everyone, like we can't just be car centric focused. Like, yes, I know it is the largest contributor to GHG, but I mean, my mom doesn't have a driver's license. Like she doesn't drive a car, right? And so how do we talk about her in this clean mobility transition? And I think to me that is like one of the biggest takeaways is that mobility and needs and how we do clean transportation should exist on the spectrum. And so how are we also developing again technology that can speak to just like car ownership or car sharing? Um, that's also my personal opinion as well. Um, one thing that we would do differently, I probably wouldn't put the survey online with us money associated with it. You get bots. We probably got 2,000 responses, if not more, and that's because we were offering a stipend. So, to someone's point in the chat, go focus groups if you can. I think the survey is great because we now have responses from our member communities, right? Um, but to really get to the nitty-gritty of it, yes, focus groups.
Thank you so much, Joy, for sharing all of that. And yeah, the inclusivity is so important. And yes, we have to all beware the bots. That is a really good piece of advice. Very practical. Thank you so much. A round of applause for Joy, especially for covering so much ground in the absence of our second panelist. So thank you so much. At this point, if people also want to chime in with their own experience with community engagement, we'd love to hear from more of you members. And if not, we can go ahead and move on to the next portion of the meeting, which will be the roundtable updates. So please raise your hand or just, oh yeah, I see some people wanting to, this is about, Bryce, is this about your experience with community engagement or more about the roundtable updates?
Yeah, it's absolutely about my response with community engagement, and it's related to that last question. I've inspected many thousands of apartments, and when I see an EV, I always try to talk to the owner, and I ask them about EV charging. And 100% of the ones who I've spoken to have said they love to charge at home. And then I ask them about their asserting their right to charge. And they all so far have told me that they're not bold enough to do that. They're worried that the owner would raise their rent, or that the owner would hate them or discriminate against them. And it was really quite remarkable. So out of many, many interactions, I have not found anyone bold enough to assert their right to charge, with the exception of someone who turns out to work for the Metropolitan Transit Commission. He did it.
Bryce, I think I was getting at that when I was talking, right? Like the people who know, and that is because they have some level of association, right, with this work. So
Yeah, it's not even that they know. It's that many of them knew,
mm,
but they weren't willing to do.
to do the act, yeah.
That's
Good
the
point. Yeah,
thing. That's
yeah.
the thing. And that's a sort of a sad statement on the relationship between residents and housing providers, because this is an amenity that the and then I talk to the owners and I say, hey, how about EV charging? And they tell me, oh, none of our residents have ever asked for it. And I go, well, what about that one over at that property who has an EV? And they go, oh, yeah, they haven't talked to us. No one wants this. And so that's quite a disconnect.
Yeah, one thought that I have that I'm trying to work on is almost a needs assessment tool or some type of like quick survey. I know that Fourth and I think Grid, they have a group where they have some tools there, but I think for property managers and owners, when that is the response of like, well, we don't think our residents want that, right? Like, what does it look like to distribute some quick survey, some quick touch points so that you then can have that data to advocate in the way that you need to, whether that's the property owner or even it being a tool for residents, right? Like, hey, we actually surveyed everyone that lived here, and although we might not have access to charger or a vehicle right now, if we had chargers, like our purchase behavior could change, right? And so, yeah, the need to have more resources for people to be able to advocate, I think is important.
Ignacio, do you have a question or a comment?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add to that really quickly. I am leading the Charge at Home program at Fourth Mobility. And out of well, I can't say how many responses we've had, but I want to say like 99% have been like condo owners or tenants reaching out to me, and I've had maybe like 1% of like apartment owners, like the building owners, or a COA representative contact me. Um, and and most of these tenants and unit owners are, you know, they haven't contacted anyone in the administration, right? And it's all, they're kind of just like trying to see if it's feasible or not. And I just wanted to add to that really quickly to echo what Bryce was saying about, the disconnect.
Thanks for that observation. Kathy?
Yeah, hi, I'm Kathy with Cool to Earth, and we partner with MCE to deliver EV education. I just wanted to share that echo some of the things Joy said about working with CBOs. And for us, it's just been the crucial part of reaching these communities. They are on the ground, they are a trusted resource. They have the channels, like, for example, they use WhatsApp in many cases, and we can't do that directly to them. So in many instances, we've gotten feedback from them that has really changed the way we engage with the communities. Another example was just using the word pledge for a climate action that people take at an event. And we realized that the word pledge had had an implication of a financial commitment, which was really uncomfortable for their members. And they were able to give us that feedback, and we revised it to a climate promise. So I just want to reiterate how important it is to leverage the CBOs. They know their communities, and to formalize your collaboration with them, create an MOU, have a stipend, and partner with them consistently.
Thank you, Kathy. Very well said. Any other hands? Yes, Piet, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, you are. Thanks. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I just wanted to also talk about working with CBOs. College Action had a large CARB grant focused in the city of Watsonville. And I think Joy mentioned this, but the process of getting the CBOs in contract was really hard. I mean, the criteria that was set to go in contract, insurance and other requirements, one CBO just had a decline, and it was $100,000 contract that was would have been a big part of their budget. So I mean, those are probably things that people throughout the call and doing that kind of work encounter, but just something that would be great to figure out a smoother way of engaging CBOs and paying them properly for their time without burdening them with so much bureaucratic and other requirements. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, very, very correct. Well, thank you everyone for contributing to our panel discussion. We're going to move on now to the next portion of our meeting, which is the roundtable updates. So the way this works, typically you raise your hand and I'll call in order of the hands raised, and please limit your comments to a brief announcement or update. And feel free to also include information in the chat, since people will want to see links and get connected that way. So thank you. And James, please go ahead.
Everyone, yeah, I just wanted to, very relevant to this conversation so far, is that MTC is opening up a call. It has opened up a call for projects to support CBOs in capacity building and engagement. So hopefully being able to help address all of these concerns raised around engaging with CBOs and their capacity to, and also And this isn't limited to EVs or even transportation. It's covers CBOs in the intersection of housing, land use, and transportation. So let me drop in the link. So the call for project is open. They're offering info sessions. They offered one yesterday, and we'll be offering an additional one. There's also going to be open office hours to support applicants to develop their applications and apply. And then application, the opportunity to submit applications will open at the end of the month for a couple weeks, but folks should be sort of engaging and developing their applications now. There's a lot of information on the website I dropped in. And again, there's going to be an information session coming up. They'll be posting recordings of yesterday's info session. So definitely keep checking back on the website.
Thank
Thanks.
you, James. Can you remind us what the CARE acronym is standing for in this case?
Yeah, it's a lot of acronyms on acronyms. It is the Community Action Resource Empowerment. So I would just keep in mind all this acronyms to just say, this is a grant program for CBOs, and there's different categories, one for like capacity building, other for like partnership engagement, and then actual implementation of projects.
That's great. Thanks for telling us about that opportunity. Next, Michaela.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to do a quick plug for the 3rd annual Clean Fleet Expo that TAM will be hosting October 8th this year from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Lunch will be included. The event is free. It's an opportunity for everyone to come and attend, geared towards local agencies, but also private partners who are looking at innovations in the field, trying to figure out how we navigate this advanced clean fleet regulation too. Very, very good opportunity for this group to get together, I feel like, and chat through the different challenges that we're facing and different ways that we can address them together. So I will go ahead and put a link to that in the chat. If you are interested in engaging further beyond just attendance, please feel free to reach out at the link in the bottom. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Michaela. And did you say what time it was on October 8th?
10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Registration will start around 9:30 a.m. and there will be a networking hour from 2 to 3.
Thank you so much. Great. Kari, is that how you pronounce your name?
Yes, perfect, actually. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I am Kare Gonzalez, and I am the Site Launch and Events Lead for BP Pulse Americas. BP Pulse is the EV charging business of BP, and we are working now very diligently to build a reliable and fast EV charging network across the US. We also work with fleet, but that's separate from this conversation. I'm taking this opportunity just to share that we recently opened our new EV charging hub near SFO at 177 Airport Boulevard. It features 12 400 kilowatt ultra fast charging bays with a mix of NACS and CCS connectors. It's open 24/7 and it has various restaurants and coffee options nearby. Obviously, because it's located so close to the airport, it's very convenient for ride-hail drivers, renters from Hertz. It's actually at a Hertz location. And local EV owners, just to get them on the road fast. And we invite everyone to learn more about BP Pulse. Of course, go ahead and visit the site if you're able to. And I'm going to put the website and the social media in the chat so you can learn more about our network map and everything that we're doing here at the US. So yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you, Kari. Congratulations on the charging bays. That sounds really exciting. Bryce, please go ahead.
Hello, this is Bryce Nesbitt with EV Apartment Plug Box. But I want to highlight something about reach codes. You might have heard that there was a law passed that is freezing all building codes in California for at least 6 years. That's why all of the communities in the Bay Area are rushing to pass their last chance to do a reach code or a code beyond state law right now. Mountain View passed last night. San Jose failed to pass last night. One of the things that we can do for EV charging is when we go into a particular building and want to add EV charging, sometimes we face a panel upgrade. And that can get into a huge mess with gas shutoffs and PG&E approvals and months of delay. If we can avoid that panel upgrade, we can do things much, much faster. And there's a way to do that. The National Electric Code has been updated to make it easier to use old electrical panels and keep them. And we could bring that to California early. I'll put my contact information in the chat. Anyone who has touched these REACH codes or to the electrical code issues, let's get in touch. And have you take any questions on that? It's a pretty technical issue, and there's a tight timeline because these REACH codes have to pass by October.
Thanks for the update, Bryce. Yeah, very, very dramatic things going on in that area. Next, Gopal.
Yes, hi. So just a quick one, a last-ditch effort before the tax credit goes away for cars. City of Napa, RCD, the Bike Coalition are hosting something on Tuesday at the Farmers Market in Napa. That's between 8 and 12 on the 16th of September. Oh, there's Deborah.
Hi, and I am just going to interrupt to say that MCE is sponsoring that event, and Ride and Drive Clean will be there as well. So things have changed very quickly, but it should be great.
Thank you, Gopal. Thank you, Deborah. Did you have something else to add while you're up, Deborah?
No, that was it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see, Rachel.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I'm in transit. So I just wanted to say the City of Palo Alto Utilities is working right now to develop our next iteration of our EV charging infrastructure program. So we're bringing it to our Sustainability and Climate Action Committee next Friday in concept, and we're really trying to figure out how to utilize creative financing and bring in charging as a service as a way to be able to extend the reach of our funding to get more charging in to support multifamily properties. So if anyone has experience with kind of creatively financing EV projects or wants to talk about that with me, I just wanted to put it out there that I would love to have a conversation. And, we're looking at on-site charging at multifamily properties, as well as supporting curbside charging and charging hubs. And we actually have a project that we were awarded funding from MTC. We're still working to get that money encumbered in partnership with the school district, actually, to put in charging hubs at 8 of the elementary schools in Palo Alto to provide access to charging to those neighborhoods, especially where there's multifamily properties. So I just wanted to share that. And then also City of Palo Alto Utilities, and I think a couple of the CCAs in the Bay Area and PG&E are also all participating in it. And we're trying to figure out ways to be able to offer discounted to equity customers. One of the things that we're working on right now, and I'll stop there.
Oh, thanks, Rachel. I think you were breaking up a little bit there, but you were basically talking about low-cost discounted charging for residents, it sounded like. Thank you for that.
Yeah, sorry, my audio got weird for a second. Yeah, so we're trying to come up with a mechanism for allowing our rate assistance customers, so similar to PG&E's care customers, the ability to charge at our public charging stations at a discounted rate.
Great. Thank you so much. Be safe. Sarai?
Hi, it's Sarai Rojas at San Jose Clean Energy. Wanted to share that we launched a new point of sale incentive for EVs on September 1. I'll drop that in the chat. $4,000 for new EVs, $2,000 for used. And that's all.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Kim, you're up.
Hi all. Sorry to turn the chat into an advertisement a little bit. So I used to be with the County of San Mateo working on climate and energy programs and retired at the end of March. And now I'm working with Paired Power. And if you don't know them, is a solar battery microgrid EV charging solution. So there's what they call a Pear Tree, which is a standalone system that can charge a couple of vehicles. It can also be grid tied to a light pole, for instance, and greatly increase the capacity of the charging. Of course, the power is all kind of stored in the battery, so when it's not being used, the battery is charging up. Then there's also a Pear Fleet product, which is custom designed, and all this is based on the available power at the site. And the concept is basically you don't need to do a utility upgrade. The cost of the system is more expensive on the front end, of course, but it pays off over a couple of years of time of use. People don't really consider that there are demand charges when you connect EV charging to a building, or maybe you do, but oftentimes that's a huge cost on an annual basis, and that's what helps sort of balance it out. What you save is the time and the delay of trying to go through a utility upgrade. The system has a state-of-the-art energy management system. It has a charge point pay system for the public to use or for your workers to use, so you can track. It collects the data on usage, everything from how much power is coming from the solar, how much is stored at any given time in the battery, how much is going to each of the vehicles. So it's a very soup to nuts kind of a system, and I think it's appropriate for a lot of agencies.
Thanks, Tim. I just want to make sure we have enough time to do some announcements at the
That's
end.
fine. I'm just going to throw Paired Power into the chat, and there's a webinar coming up next week that people can register for by going to the website.
Perfect. Thank you. Pete, you're next, and then we'll do some announcements quickly at the
Thank you. This is Pete Christensen with Silicon Valley Clean Cities Coalition. We're hosted by Breathe California, the Bay Area. We're a federal local partnership with the U.S. Department of Energy. We partner with all sorts of groups. I know many people here that we've partnered with on EVs and EV charging and promoting events. We just had our big annual EV ride and drive. Thank you for San Jose Clean Energy and SADAI for supporting us there, and many other organizations. Thank you. I just saw something in the chat. As far as our parent organization, Breathe California, the Bay Area, we're having our big annual fundraiser to raise the support the work they do in air quality and lung health. It's the Breath of Life Walk. Just look at lungsrus.org, LUNGSRUS.org, LUNGSRUS.org. It's happening at Hellier Park in San Jose on Saturday, September 27th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's a 5 kilometer walk. Gonna have music there, a DJ, food, all sorts of prizes, raffles, all that type of stuff. We are working with many organizations from PG&E to Silicon Valley Clean Energy. We've worked a lot with San Jose Clean Energy, and various DOE grants on EVs and EV charging, and anything we can do to reduce transportation related greenhouse gases and air pollution. If people want to connect with us, I'll drop my email in the chat. We're working with PG&E on their fleet advisory services program, targeting small businesses and schools in our area.
Thanks,
Cool.
Pete. I'm gonna just cut
you.
you off there just for time, but thank you very much for the announcement. Michelle, can we bring back the slide deck just real quick at the I think it's almost the last slide. And I see your hand raised, Sven. We'll get to you in just a minute. Well, anyway, the slide would say that there is a meeting scheduled tentatively for December. December 11th is our tentative date, and that topic will be on fleet transitions. So stay tuned for that. It will be a pretty exciting topic. And we will also have a special sort of mini ceremony or designation acknowledgement for the members of the Charging Smart cohort who participated this past half year or so. They're going to be receiving their designations at the end of the year, so we wanted to give them their kudos. So yeah, those are the two announcements. And Sven, I guess you will be next.
Hi there, Sven Thiessen, National Charging Access Coalition. We're working to get equitable California building regulations addressing EV charging infrastructure. It's been a 4-year-long struggle. We're submitting a comment letter next week. If anyone wants to participate with that, ping me. I'll put my email in the chat. Yeah. And thank everybody on this call for what you do. And a shout out to Acterra too. Bonus shout out.
All right, thank you. We'll look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and take care. We'll send out the recording as soon as it's available. Thank you so much.